The topsoil can be disturbed, and that's what's supposed to be used to cover your potatoes. But the concept of destruction or disturbance is when you bring the soil that's supposed to be down up, upwards. Now, in disturbing the surface of your soil is perfectly fine. It's when you disturb that soil that's all the way down and disturb it to come up is what we don't want to do. Like, you know, when you're seeing a disc plow, you see big chunks coming from far and then turning over, you know, as it's going. That's meaning that you're bringing the soil that's not supposed to be at the surface to the surface. So when you're saying disturbance, it means the structure. That's why when we talk about the structure of your soil, the soil that's supposed to be on the top stays on the top. The soil that's supposed to be on the sub or lower part stays on the lower. So that's the whole concept that you want to do. So I was telling a couple of the guys that were right around us, the next one we're going to go into is a rotavator. And we're going to go into, and I'll show you just like we did on the chisel, about what goes on with the rotavator. But if there isn't a rotavator available to you, sometimes we substitute a harrow. So, because what we're trying to do now is to be able to get this surface of the soil prepared and soft enough that you'll be able to then heap up that soil to be able to create your mounds. So that's what he's going to hook up now, and what we're going to go for our final bed preparation before we plant. So if you're going into a manual planting, we talk about surface planting. And does anyone know why we encourage surface planting?
Softening, because of the soil has been softened, and then it will allow the roots to penetrate.
Exactly. So when farmers tell me they like to dig these big furrows and be able to put your potato directly into there, you know, that's where I say we just try to create an area above that really hard soil for your potato to be comfortable. But now you're digging back into it, into a really hard area, and putting that potato back into there and expecting it to be very healthy, you know, and being able to produce as much as you can. One of the other things that we like to do is that now we're allowing that moisture to be able to penetrate into your soil and kind of be held down in that subsoil. Now, we all know that potatoes, if they're drenched in water, what happens?
Yeah,
they rot.
Yeah.
They create diseases. So when you have that moisture that's underneath your potatoes sitting on top, that allows your roots to penetrate in there and to grab that water, rather than your potato being totally engulfed in water and potentially rotting. So allow that moisture to stay where it is, put that potato right on the surface, and then put that soil right on top of it. So it's going to be determined by the cost that you want to put into it, how much and how many times you put soil on top of it. Because we all know that the more soil we put up there, the more opportunity that you have for more potatoes to grow. Because you know when a stolon hits that light and starts to be able to create leaves and be able to create as a stem and not a potato. So if you allow those stolons to be able to remain under the soil underneath your mounds, it'll start to create more potatoes. So that's a really important with why we have a lot of loose soil on your surface, is because you want to put that around your potatoes. What happens when one of your potatoes starts to grow and then there's no soil on top of it and it starts to get exposed to sun? What happens?
It becomes vegetative.
Well, it does, and then but if you have a potato there that's a new one that's coming out, half of it's under the soil and then half of it's exposed to the sun, what starts to happen to that outside? It starts to change color. And that changing of color, what does that mean about your potato?
Infected.
It's not good. Yeah, there you have your exchange of your chlorophyll that starts to create something that's not edible for humans. So that's why you want to get enough soil that as they're growing there, they stay underneath there. So that's why we want to make sure that we have enough loose soil.
Can I also start with harrow, then chisel?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, it is possible, and it's going to be you just don't want to do unneeded amount of tractors coming over your soil, because then you're going to start to create a hard pan again, but that is something that you could potentially start with. Yeah, you'll have to see how you want to kind of do it, because this is also changes what you do in the different soil types. Like if you go into some areas where it's very super heavily clayed, then that might be a little bit different than in our semi-clay area like we have here. So that's getting into more technical aspects of implementation of different agricultural implements. But this is our basics here to be able to start with this, to be able to make sure we're getting good soil to be able to mound up. Any other questions?
Maybe a land that I had how long starting to plant, which machinery?
You can use this. You can. For us, we use a herbicide first, because you allow some of those grasses to die. That loosens up your soil a little bit. Then you can sometimes come in with this. If it's really stubborn, that the roots aren't breaking up, then sometimes we'll come with a disc. But we won't put that disc all the way down to be able to get that soil from low up. We'll just do it halfway to be able to make sure we're scraping the top off to be able to get some of that grass. So that we can just get that top. So we're not disturbing that lower part of the soil as much, but we're still being able to manipulate that soil enough. And then we'll come through with the chisel. But the one thing when you're dealing with it, and how many times you want those implements to go through your farm, you also have to think of the cost. Because if you put 10 implements through this and you spent $100K in just trying to prepare your soil, you didn't even account for your fertilizers, you didn't even account for your herbicides, your fungicides, your pesticides. Now you're spending 350,000 shillings to produce 1 acre. Is it worth it doing it? So that's where the balance has to be. If you can get away with doing 1 chisel, 1 rotivating, and then planting, the better. But if you can't, and you need to go through again, you have to balance those things. So everything that you do has a cost. So that's why it's important for you to be able to be recording everything you're doing in their costing, because you go through that season, you're saying, oh, I did 2 chisels, I did 3 harrows, and I also sprayed a herbicide here, and I ended up with 5 tons. And it's like, all right, I didn't make any money. Well, let's see if I reduce that 1 chisel, I reduce it down to 1 harrow, and I can see, am I going to get the same exact thing? So that's going to have to be all of your guys' challenges of being able to see what benefits you in potatoes, because that's why we do our demos, is that we're constantly testing new agrochemicals to be able to see how we can either produce more or bring our cost of production down. So you have to be doing that same exact thing at your own levels to be able to see what exactly works in your region. So we're going to be assisting you with the soil sample, because we don't want you buying 100 kgs of nitrogen when your soil only needs 10, because that also increases your cost of production. But we also don't want you to say, I'm only going to put 1 bag of fertilizer when we know that your soil needs 2. Because if you spent that extra 5,000 shillings to be able to give those right nutrients that your potato needed, that could be the difference of getting 5 tons or 7 tons. So if you're getting an extra 3 tons of potatoes, is that going to cover that cost of putting that extra 5,000 shillings of fertilizer? Well covered. So you got to be smart in what you're doing as a potato farmer to say, what's giving me my most benefit? If I'm doing something to me, with the soil testing, it's a no-brainer. Why are we as farmers not knowing what's going on with our soil? Isn't that the most important thing in our lives, is this soil? If this soil is not producing for us, what are we doing? We're doing nothing. So that's why, as a farmer, we have to, just like our babies, like when we come up, we know what we have to feed them, what we have to give them to make them mature. We have to treat the soil the same exact way, because we're putting an investment into here, so we want to make sure that we're getting our investment out. So why are we going to continually deal with sick soil? Is that going to be beneficial to us in the end? No. Or why are we going to be in the dark of saying, like if someone came up to you and said, what's going on with your soil? How would you feel if you say, I don't know? And you're a farmer, you're saying, you're going into that meeting, I've been a farmer for 50 years. And then that guy goes, well, what's going on with your soil? And you say, I don't know. What is he going to think about you? Exactly. That's the thing is, and that's where you really got to start to say, as farmers, what are we doing? Are we trying to make this a business? Are we trying to gamble? Because if we don't know what's going on with our soil, that's a gamble. Like if you know how to keep your soil healthy, if you know how to keep this structure right to where moisture can stay in this soil, and you're not doing it, what are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're gambling. Because like you get it or you lose it. Like it's not an overnight thing. This is not like you adapt this and you're going to be perfect the next season. No. You're going to be learning and you're going to be continually adapting. Like there's seasons around here on the farm, and those who live close to here, they've seen that our potatoes, like we had this very bad frost that came through here. We had storms that come through, and not that our crops aren't affected, but you look at our direct neighbors, their whole crops are wiped out. And then you come to our farm, it's not that we're not saying that we're still producing 10 tons, but we're able to make it through to be able to get us through to the next season. You want to be that farmer that's saying, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to take that chance, this comes through and then I get a complete crop failure? No. You want to be there and say that through that hard time when we're getting very low, at least I got something to be able to then make it into the next season. So, and even some of the farms, like when we're not perfect. I think I told you that guy a million times. There's sometimes that we make mistakes and that happens, but those mistakes we have to learn from and then be able to change what we're doing that we don't do that again.
Mistakes are stepping stones.
They are. That's what it is. There must be there. And you guys are not going to leave here and go out and not make mistakes. I can tell you that 100%. But you got to leave here of knowing something more than you knew yesterday. And then continue to be building those things.
In fact, we are learning everything.
Yeah.
Everything. As there is that aspect of the water.